What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I'll be going over my UFC Goat List top 20. I'll be looking at belts, resume, skills, dominance, accolades, overall careers. And I know a lot of people like to look at newer gen fighters and put them higher on the Goat List, but I'll have some older gen fighters, some newer gen fighters. It'll be a pretty even list. But without further ado, let's dive right into it. So starting at number 20, I have Dominic Cruz. He's my second greatest bantamweight of all time with 4 title wins. He beat Uriah Faber twice, Demetrius Johnson, TJ Dillashaw. Now obviously if you look at his WEC career, he's the greatest bantamweight ever. But for this video, I'm only looking at UFC resumes. But even then, very good champion, unbeaten for 8 years. And if it wasn't for repeated injuries, he would be a lot higher on the GOAT list. At 19, I have Charles Oliveira. Technically, he only has 2 title wins, Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier. But I definitely count the Justin Gaethje win, even though he missed weight by half a pound. And aside from the title wins, he's beaten guys like Chandler again, Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson. He's got a very stacked resume. At 18, I have my GOAT of the bantamweight division, TJ Dillashaw. Just slightly ahead of Dominic Cruz due to his dominance in title fights. 5 title fights, all 5 by knockout. He beat Renan Barão when Barão was a top 3 pound for pound fighter and undefeated for almost a decade. He knocked out Cody Garbrandt twice when Garbrandt was undefeated and a top 5 or 6 pound for pound fighter. And I know Dillashaw tested positive in his fight against Cejudo, but I don't hold that flyweight fight against his bantamweight legacy. At 17, I have a current champion, Alex Pereira, a 2-division champion, one of the greatest strikers in UFC history, and without a doubt, his best win is Israel Adesanya. Now, even after he lost the title to Izzy in the rematch, he was able to go up to 205, win the belt there. Now, I will say, I don't think his opposition at light heavyweight was been the best. I mean, Yuri, Jamal Hill, Khalil Roundtree. I've always thought the hardest fight was Ankalaev, but that's the big fight coming up. So if Pereira can knock out Ankalaev, or at least win, he'd jump up several spots on this list. At 16, I have Henry Cejudo, one of the few double champs that also defended his belts in both weight classes. At flyweight, I think he has the best back-to-back wins in UFC history. He beat DJ and then knocked out TJ Dillashaw. Then he moved up to bantamweight, beat Marlon Moraes and knocked out Dominic Cruz. The only thing against Henry is he retired too early and then came back a bit too late. At 15, I have Max Holloway. Aside from the title fight wins, he has so many significant strike records. But to the title fight wins, he's beaten Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo twice, Frankie Edgar, Brian Ortega, and he's able to move up to 155, knock out Justin Gaethje. He has some really good non-title wins as well. Now at the start, I did say to have some older generation fighters. So for number 14, I'm going real old school, Randy Couture. He was a 2-division champion at light heavyweight and heavyweight. He's able to knock out guys like Chuck Liddell, Kevin Randleman, and Vitor Belfort in title fights. I feel like he has to be a consensus top 15 fighter. At 13, we're going old school again, Matt Hughes, 9-time welterweight champion. He's finished guys like GSP and BJ Penn in title fights. And I get his competition wasn't the best, especially in the early 2000s, but no man with 9 title fight wins should be left off in all-time ranking. At number 12, we're going back to the current era with Israel Adesanya. A very quick and active rise to the champion. He made his debut in February 2018, and by April 2019, he was an interim champion. He has some really good title fight wins as well. Robert Whittaker twice, Yoel Romero. He knocked out Paulo Costa in an undefeated versus undefeated title fight. Knocked out Alex Pereira, which is the only person to do so far. I think Izzy's had some really good performances and a very nice reign. At 11, just off my top 10, I have Kamaru Usman. At his peak, he was the pound-for-pound #1 fighter. He dominated Tyron Woodley, beat Colby Covington twice, knocked out Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal, and even before title fights, he beat guys like Damian Maia, Sean Strickland, which that win has aged really well, Rafael Dos Anjos, very well-rounded fighter. Now to the top 10. A lot of these guys from 10 to 5, they're pretty much interchangeable, but I have a pretty clear top 4, a Mount Rushmore if you will. But at number 10, I have Khabib, very dominant champion, 29-0, one of the greatest primes ever, submitting Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje back-to-back. And again, just like Henry Cejudo, the only knock on Khabib is he retired too early. At number 9, right in front of Khabib is his protege, Islam Makhachev, my current lightweight GOAT. I do think Khabib was the bit more dominant champion, but Islam has a slightly better resume. Submitting Charles Oliveira, beating Alexander Volkanovski twice when he was the pound-for-pound #1, submitting Dustin Poirier. Him and Khabib are neck and neck, but I have Islam just a tiny bit higher. At number 8, I got another teammate from AKA, Daniel Cormier. He was a double champion, defended both belts as well. At light heavyweight, he was able to beat guys like Gus, Rumble twice, Volkan Ozdemir, and then at heavyweight, he knocked out Stipe, submitted Derek Lewis. I think he's got some really good wins, and his only losses are to two of the GOATs. At number 7, I got the man I was talking about having a rivalry with DC, and that's my greatest heavyweight, Stipe Miocic. At the higher weight classes, it's harder to keep the belt because all it takes is one punch, but Stipe has 6 heavyweight title wins, beating guys like DC twice, Francis Ngannou, Verdum, Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, and even some good non-title wins. Arlovsky, Mark Hunt. Stipe in his prime was a very good fighter. Now my 5 and 6 are very close, but at 6 I have Alexander Volkanovski. Beating Max Holloway 3 times takes a special kind of fighter, and Volk was one of those guys. Great striker, very high IQ, great takedown defense. He's able to go up to 155 and give Islam a very hard fight. Sometimes I wish he didn't take that second Islam fight, so he could have fought Topuria at a better version, but that's part of taking risks at a high level. At 5, I have Jose Aldo, 8-time champion, and people overlooked the dominance before the Conor McGregor fight. He knocked out Zombie, knocked out Chad Mendes, beat Frankie Edgar twice. Now I know he has struggled at times later on in his career, but that happens to a lot of great fighters. Now to my top 4, my Mount Rushmore, but at 4, I have Demetrius Johnson. If you're talking pure skills, he might be the greatest ever. And I know some of his title fights wasn't the best opposition, but he's beaten guys like Cejudo, Joseph Benavidez twice, Kyoji Horiguchi. Those aren't easy fights whatsoever. At 3, I have Anderson Silva. Now the disrespect I've seen for Anderson Silva over the last few years on GOAT List is crazy to me. He was one of the most dominant fighters ever, and he made good fighters look easy, and that's the knock on him. For example, Vitor Belfort was a former champion. Silva knocked him out in a round. Rich Franklin was a champion. Silva knocked him out in a round. Forrest Griffin was a former champion. Silva knocked him out in a round. It's just a trend here. Silva made the good guys look easy, and that's why people hate on him. And he has the longest win streak in UFC history. At 2, I have George St. Pierre. He was able to avenge both of his losses to Matt Serra and Matt Hughes. He was a 2-division champion, beating guys like Michael Bisping, Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz, BJ Penn. He finished Matt Hughes twice, and he's one of the more well-rounded fighters of all time. And at 1, my GOAT is John Jones. Even if you take away the personal and legal issues, his wins on PEDs, I do still think his resume is great enough to be the GOAT. Beating DC, Shogun, Rampage, Rashad Evans, Glover Teixeira, Alexander Gustafsson, moving up to heavyweight, beating Cyril Gane and Stipe. It's a very good resume, and he's been at the top of the game for almost a decade. But anyways, that was my UFC GOAT list. Let me know what you guys think. If you have your own rankings, I'll be happy to read them in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, get me to 1,000 subscribers. I think we're around 40% of the way there. But thanks for watching, guys.